welcome everybody to today's Legally Speaking podcast live, proudly sponsored by Clio. And today we are diving into a powerful question for modern legal world, which is how do you make the justice system more understandable, accessible, and genuinely more engaging for the public, especially young people? And my guest has built one of the most innovative answers to that particular question. So I'm excited to be joined by the wonderful Nicolas, who is a lawyer, journalist, and content producer. And he's doing incredible work in this space, which we're going to learn a lot more about today. So Nicolas, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Rod, for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So let's get into it. Let's tell a little bit more about your background and also what sparked the idea to teach the Supreme Court using documentaries, storytelling, and actually video games.
So the initial idea for so actually this year is the 150th anniversary of the Supreme Court. So I'm working in a team at the University of Ottawa called Reimagining, and we had the idea a few years ago to kind of mark the anniversary to create this educational project, this vast public educational project about the Supreme Court. And quickly the question emerged of, well, how do you tell the court in an engaging way, especially for young people? And quickly there's this guideline that came up that was, we want to tell the court through the stories of people who actually live it. So justices, lawyers, or citizens. And so that's when the idea of the documentaries and video game came up. It's actually something that we had dabbled with before, but like on a much more narrower scope. So basically, so we just decided to go all in on storytelling. And plus, so there's this kind of common dilemma you have in this kind of project is sometimes having to choose between kind of play and narrative breadth and like the much harder educational content. So having different outputs, it actually allows us to kind of cheat our way out of this dilemma. So the game really has a play first mentality. The documentaries have a story first mentality. And then the educational vignettes and interactive content have a learning first mentality. So we try to kind of having both ways here.
Yeah, and you're covering it all, and I think it's genuinely progressive. It's exciting, and I loved your approach to how you're taking this. But why do you think traditional legal education often, I guess, fails to engage the public and especially the younger audiences?
Well, first, I think law is a tough subject to teach. It's complex. It can be dry. It has its own language. You kind of forget it when you're, deep into it. But if you take yourself back to the first year of law school, it is really challenging. And because of that challenge and that complexity and that distance, a lot of people often have, I think, the initial reaction that it's not for them, that it's only for lawyers. They are interested usually, but we don't have the right tools to reach them. So I think that's how a project like this can come in, because I think it's our first job as a legal educator is to make them care about the legal system, show them why law concerns them, why rule of law is important, why it's important to know about it. Plus, I think we live in an era where attention is kind of a rare commodity. Distractions are really strong. And again, especially for young people. So we have to rethink the way we teach we teach in general, but especially about law in the institutions because of the difficulties I just mentioned. Because it's hard to compete with the phones, the Netflixes, the video games of the world. So it's a pretty big challenge, but we have to kind of level the playing field. And I think we can do that by using similar tools, so digital, innovative, immersive tools, of course, for different purposes, but like meeting audiences where they are. And today, for better or worse, that's online. So I think that's where a project like us comes in. I think that's where a podcast like yours comes in. Just trying different ways to just make it more engaging and try to reach people.
And you make a really good point there. It's about meeting the audience where they are because things do change, don't they? And, we were having this conversation 20, 30, 40 years ago. It probably wouldn't be digital first, but now we absolutely are in a digital first, hyper connected world. And so you have to understand that and hopefully get that education out there and connect
Yeah.
with people, build that trust. So, no, I absolutely hear what you're saying. Okay, so when you first started showing this project to lawyers and educators, what reaction surprised you the most?
Well, I think there's, like, I guess there's a different surprise for each group. So I think for lawyers, and I include myself as this in this, is how little we actually know about the Supreme Court. I'm guessing it might be the same case the UK, but in Canada, of course. So lawyers, of course, we know about the big cases. We know about how a hearing works generally, but the court's inner workings, its history, we don't know that much about that because we don't learn it at school, and when you're actually practicing, it's not something you're gonna spend your time studying. And that's, I think that's surprising, considering it's the highest legal institution in the country, and
Mm.
we don't know that much about it. So that was surprising. And in terms of educators, I think just how strong the initial interest was. There is in Canada, at least in Canada, a strong need for educational tools in law, because it's part of the curriculum in many of the provinces. But educators, and especially the high school, they don't usually have legal formation. They're not super comfortable teaching it, so they rely a lot on educational tools and resources like this one, and most of them are very good, but they're text based or presentations in class, and so I think something that could be a bit different, like this project, much more interactive, that could be used as a resource in class, outside of class. That's something we've really had a strong positive reaction so far from teachers. So that's, I mean, it's a very good surprise, I'd say.
Yeah, and you look, it's great to hear that as well. And I guess that leads nicely onto what we like to talk a lot about here on the show is collaboration, actually, and breaking silos through that. So you've brought together lawyers, filmmakers, professors, game developers, and technologists. So what made that particular mix work so well?
Well, I'm sorry if that's kind of corny, but I think it's first of all, it's having the right people all over
Yeah.
the place. So it's outside of there. So of course, having people with talent and skills and expertise, but especially having people, when you talk about kind of breaking silos and interdisciplinary collaboration, it's having people that are open minded and flexible and comfortable operating with other ways of working and learning from each other, because lawyers, we won't work as we usually do if we work with filmmakers and video game developers, and same thing for the filmmakers, and same thing for the educational technologists. So it's having kind of the right team in place and the open-minded people. And I think another big component, and it's actually kind of based on this, that's our expertise in my team at Vision, it's having people with multidisciplinary expertise to translate between ways of working and languages. So I'm a lawyer and a journalist. We have members on our team that are lawyers and filmmakers, or people that are really well versed in law and creators and graphic design. So kind of acting as the glue for the whole thing, like making sure that the machine is oil and the rigs are turning. Because yeah, so making kind of basically acting as translators. Are you there, Rob?
I am there. Yes, sorry, it just cut out for a moment, but I did get that. And again, thank you for being so thorough in your answer there. I guess just following on from that, then, because we spoke off air about law being quite tricky. What's been the hardest part for you in terms of translating legal accuracy into actually creative media without losing the nuance of it all?
Um, it's something that I kind of mentioned at the top of our conversation, but you can't have everything. You can't have as much nuance as you would like in in a 5 minute video, or even a series of 5 minute video, than in an hour long lecture or book. So I think the hardest part, it is something that took us like an enormous amount of time, the actual editing, because we had to ask ourselves very hard questions at every turn for every component. Like, is what what really what does really matter to our target audience? What is the most important things for them to learn? If it's not essential, if it's just a nice add-on, most of the time it ends up on a cutting room floor because you just don't have the space. So that I think that's the biggest challenge actually asking yourself, yeah, what's the essence of the topic of the theme you want to teach. But like I said, we kind of try to cheat our way out of this a little bit with the additional content. So the graphics, the useful resources, the text, just finding other ways to convey the information. So it doesn't work all of the time, but it works some of the time.
No, well, not everything is always, 100%, I guess,
Yeah.
perfect in that regard. And you're probably testing things all the time and sort of, experimenting. But one thing you have been doing, of course, is featuring people who've actually brought their cases to the Supreme Court. Why was it important to tell their stories?
Well, I think it comes back to our main guideline, which is uh, telling the Supreme Court through the stories of people who live it, and that for us right away it involved citizens that brought their case to the court. Their voices are not often heard in the legal world, so I think that was the part that was first and foremost interesting to us. So I think, yeah, amplifying those voices. And I think it also allowed us to deep dive in specific cases, which is something we wanted to do, but through a different lens. So we didn't have to really focus on the legal side of things, but more on the human side of things. Um, so that's something that like telling citizen stories, it allowed us to do that. And then, so one of the main goals of the project is to teach a broad audience about the Supreme Court, so they know more about it, but also why it's important to care about it and
Yeah.
what goes on over. It's important to know what goes on over there and the concrete impact it has on Canadian society as a whole. So I don't think there's a much more efficient way to do that than through the stories of citizens just like them, because they can see themselves through them. It's situations that maybe they've encountered in their daily life, or maybe they kind of benefited from the result of a judicial decision in their life. So that was kind of in our minds when we were working on those documentaries as well.
Yeah, and obviously working very hard, and you've had some great success, and as you said off the back of it, the feedback's been great as well, which is well received. How can law do a better job of representing and actually listening to lived experience?
Um, I mean, if we're talking about especially experiences of, for lack of a better word, let's call them like citizens or ordinary people, I guess, in the legal system, I think it's a question of amplifying their voices and giving them the opportunities to actually have the stage and have the microphone and talk about it. When you look at professional development activities, and now I'm talking especially in the legal world. So when you look at conferences and formations and so on, it will often be with other legal professionals, judges, business leaders, but none of an ordinary citizens. And I think there's a lot to be learned from their perspective. Like even like for first and foremost, from a practical point of view, from an individual case point of view, but also for a broader kind of policy point of view. Because the legal system, we are the main actors, but it's not actually for us. It's for the people that are bringing their cases to court. So I think we always have to think about them for first and foremost, and having their voice amplified and listening to them. I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think we fully support that here as well. I mean, a word that goes hand in hand, obviously, with law and legal education is trust. So, how can immersive experiences help rebuild public trust in courts and sort of democratic institutions? Do you feel?
I, well, I don't think you can trust an institution that you don't know anything about or that you don't know much about.
Yeah.
Um, so to trust an institution, to critique it in an intelligent, in an informed way, you have to know about it. So that's I think that's how the kind of the educational part comes in, and like the multimedia immersive thing. I think it helps educate in a more engaging way, and also especially with the video game and like I said, the immersion part of it, it helps you. I think, well, in some ways literally see yourself in some ways in the institution. I mean, the video game, you're virtually in the court. You can explore it, jump on the podium if you want. I mean, and there's a quest through that and everything. But I think that is key in building trust. If you want people to kind of see it as their institution, because it's what it is the court. It is the court of the people. So I think that's the immersive part of it for sure. It helps foster trust in that way. So when you see yourself in it and when you learn about it.
I think you make a great point. It's fully understanding it first, so then you know where you probably can form an opinion around trust specifically in terms of whether it's working for you, etc., etc. You were touching on it there and touched on it sort of throughout the conversation. But what role do you see more generally for interactive learning in the future of legal literacy?
I mean, circling back, I think it's to our discussion. I think we have a technology is evolving rapidly, and it gives us a lot of opportunities for different things, for creating content, both for all kind of different purposes. And I think it's a really big opportunity for education. I think we'll have to work on all fields with all the different ways. I don't think we'll see the end of traditional teaching in classrooms, and I think there's a lot of value in that. And it's probably going to remain the main component of teaching. But I don't see why we wouldn't explore and kind of leverage the other tools we have with just to teach content. As long as I think the important thing is that it's based in very rigorous and serious content. So the content is rigorous, but then with the medium and the form, I think you can be very creative about it. So we can reach different type of audiences. People have different ways of learning. Just to have a broader reach and in many ways, and having fun with it, teaching it, and having fun with it, learning it. So I think interactive learning in general, there's a lot, there's a lot of potential for all of those reasons about that.
And you are being very creative with what you're doing. And I think, again, a great point. I think fun and learning go hand in hand. If you can kind of get the balance correct, then, the level of people's actually understanding, willingness to participate, hunger for more, it all just goes up and up and up, doesn't it?
It's all about caring. It is something. So it's actually working with educational specialists. It's something we learned very quickly, because I was talking about multidisciplinary expertise. I don't have any expertise per se in education and creating educational content. But especially as adults, but for kids as well, learning has a very strong affective component. So you need to create an emotional connection with the subject in order for us to be more receptive and to retain the information in a much more efficient way. We have to show people why they should care about the teachings. And that's where the interactive component can be very, very useful, I think, in our case.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then with sort of, a highlight moment, I guess I'd like to go to now. If you had to show every law student one part of the Supreme Court experience, which moment would you choose and why?
That's a good question. Well, I could say the video game, because it's the most, I think, special and distinctive part of it, and I just think it's a lot of fun. But let's say if I'm talking about the docu-course and the video content, I think it would be the documentaries about ordinary citizens. Just to remind them the impact that they can have on, we see these stories when we talk with a client. We kind of will conceptualize a story, kind of build a case in our head. What are the strong points, the weak points? But if you see it, so that's when we see it as in the legal lens. But when you look outside of the concepts and the technicalities, these are extraordinary human stories. So there's a really strong human aspect to law, and it's something that we kind of know coming in, but I think we kind of forget through our education and through our the kind of hardships of practice. So I think that is something I would kind of show to the students, I think, to remind them of it, and so they think about it first and foremost. And I think I'm cheating a little bit, but I think also the all of the content about the interviews with the justices, because we develop, I think, a particular relationship with judges in law school. Like we tend to revere them, or at least see them as these great authoritative figures because they are. But they're also, humans first, and we don't know a lot about them, how they work, how they think, how they perceive their judicial role, kind of the dynamic between them, in a court like the Supreme Court, where there's a bench of 9 justices. So I think that's an interesting part of it for students as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's all fascinating, but I like the point that you picked out there particularly. Okay, then, so let's sort of look to the future of legal knowledge. Again, we've touched on it throughout the conversation, but do you think every sort of Apex court should eventually have its own immersive learning platform?
Well, of course. I mean, I'm kind of advocating for my own interest here, but I think that's all right for a law podcast. But sure, I mean, for all the reasons we discussed, I mean, when it comes to public trust, for legal education, um, just for democracy and rule of law as a whole, I think it's important for the kind of the widest audience possible to know more about Apex Court. And I think immersive learning, storytelling, and a project like ours, I think it's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, and again, we're here for it. We always like to look forwards with the content and discussions that we're having, and you're absolutely doing that. I guess it's a bit of a reflection moment for you now. What's been the biggest aha moment since launching the project?
Um, that's another really good question. I don't know if it's the biggest. I mean, yes, I think one of the highlights and one of the things that we've discussed the most within our team is as one is seeing the gaming community experience with the game and make it their own, because it's
Yeah.
it's not a community we're part of, and it's a really big community, but we all with their own kind of codes and languages. So the first few days of the launch of the games, we all sent each other like YouTube videos of gaming influencers kind of stream their playthrough of the game with live commentary, commenting on both on the gaming sides and the law sides, and asking questions about the Supreme Court. So it was cool to see like how a project like this could reach kind of a different audience, and how that audience could also kind of disseminate and use a project how they want to, and kind of make it their own. So that was a cool thing to see.
Yeah, and I can just imagine that as well because there'll be some super cool communities
But I mean,
with
it's
it.
funny. It's funny. You're working on this project for 2 years, and for these 2 years, it only exists within your head, and then you
Yeah.
launch it, and then it becomes something else. And then yeah, so seeing people from all over the world, kind of just like yeah, live streaming themselves, playing with it, and having fun with it. That was nice to see.
Yeah, no, and obviously the hard work you're seeing paying off as well, which is what it's all about. How do you hope legal professionals will use Supreme Court experience in their own teaching or outreach?
I think. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think I would like to use it how they would like to in their own ways. One of our goals was to make a very flexible tool. So there's a lot of content, but it's all in open navigation. So you can go through the platform, choose the topics you like, go at your own pace. Uh, so I think educators and lawyers and legal professionals, you can, as soon as you kind of explore with the platform a little bit, you can kind of again make it your own, and use it in different ways. So I would be really curious to learn and see how like all of the different ways people actually use it. Um, Although one thing I would say, and I think one thing that is very interesting, is when educators find ways to make both the games and the docu course interact. I think that's kind of where you get the richest experience. So kind of leveraging both the game, the documentaries, and the additional content in a teaching experience. Yeah, I think that's kind of the ultimate way to go about this.
Yeah, and look, this has been a fascinating discussion, and I love just how sort of progressive it is, the work that you've put in, how well it's been received, and I think also the opportunities ahead with this as well in terms of learning and general education. So thank you so much. I think you've been a great example of showcasing what happens when creativity, technology, and legal education all come together and meet. So Supreme Court experience proves that there's something really powerful in this, that legal knowledge doesn't just have to be distant or difficult. It can actually be immersive, human, which you've touched on, and absolutely accessible to everyone, which again is something we promote here on the show and really important to us in terms of improving access to justice more generally. So to everybody watching, or for folks wanting to know more, Nicolas, where can they go to find out more about you or indeed Supreme Court experience? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles too.
Yeah, so it's all on supremecourt.ca. So there you can find both the video game and the docu-course, which with the documentaries. And you can find everything in all the social media platforms at Supreme Court Experience for the project, and at Jurivision for our team, and because we have other different projects as well. So stay tuned for the rest of it.
Yeah, and I mean, they're just fantastic resources for lawyers, educators, students, anyone basically who's curious about how justice works behind the doors of a Supreme Court. You've put an immense amount of hard work into it along with the team.
Yeah.
So from all of us here on the Legally Speaking podcast, proudly sponsored by Clio, thanks so much for joining us today. But for now, over and out.
Thanks, Rob.